I'm Jason Hooten, head basketball coach, New Mexico State University, and this is episode 110 of the Talking Grammar podcast.
What's going on, everybody? It's Jeff Grammer with the Albuquerque Journal, and as you just heard, this is episode 110 now of the Talking Grammar podcast. Glad you're watching, glad you're listening. However you're consuming this podcast, it's good by me because, frankly, without you, there's I'm just out here talking to myself on my back patio. So you are here on my back patio. It's late Tuesday night as I record this. Interviewed Jason Hooten with the New Mexico State Aggies, going into his third year now as head coach of the Aggies. Interviewed him earlier Tuesday morning, and he's a guy that took over a program in a situation that was unprecedented. We won't rehash necessarily all the details of what got the program into that situation, but he's the guy that took it over and was tasked with cleaning it up, with fixing it, with rebuilding it. He is now the guy that's entering his third year, and we kind of get a reset on things. How are the Aggies progressing in that rebuild? Some fans think the transfer portal makes it a situation where if you don't do it like this, then it's not successful. He has been a guy that is now entering year three and thinks, as he talks about in this podcast, he kind of tells you where he feels the program is, based on what he took over, where he is now. We talk a lot about personal stuff, off the court stuff. He and his wife just celebrated the 25th year anniversary just last week. They just closed on their home back in Texas. It's been 2 years, remember, that he's been in Las Cruces, and they just closed this month, I guess it was, on their house, on selling their house back in Texas. So really good fun talk I had with Jason. His team is almost a complete roster turnover once again. He's pretty optimistic, I think, and frankly, I'm optimistic that they're going to compete for a Conference USA title this year. He does have some guys that can get the ball in the hoop. So one thing they've not been very good at for 2 years now is just scoring the ball, which is kind of a big deal in college basketball. They've been very good defensively, though. Last year, I think they were really, really good defensively. If you remember when they beat the Lobos in the pit, 89-83 in overtime. So you're talking about a high-powered, run-and-gun, high-tempo UNM Lobo team that was on their home court, a team that went to the second round of the NCAA playoffs, NCAA tournament, college football on my mind, I guess. And but yeah, they went to the second round of the NCAA tournament, high-scoring team, and the New Mexico State Aggies came into a sold-out pit, and held that Lobo team to 83 points in an overtime game. That's a very good defensive team. Now, a lot of people are going to remember that game as the game that New Mexico State just couldn't seem to miss a three-pointer down the stretch. And I think if you look at it statistically, based on what the Lobos were last season, I think it was more impressive how good they were defensively that game against UNM. So anyway, we talked about some of that stuff, and just good catching up with there are two, as you know, two Division I teams. I know I'm the Lobo basketball beat writer for the Albuquerque Journal, but there are two Division I teams in this state. I am the Aggie covering the Lobos, and I really don't do it all that often, but long overdue, frankly, that I caught up with Jason Hooten, and I hope you guys enjoy this. Hope you guys enjoy all our podcasts, not just the ones I'm doing, but hope you guys enjoy these ones too, and all our Lobo basketball coverage that we're still having all summer long. I just was at the Eric Olin basketball camp earlier today, still getting to know some of these players. Next week, we're kind of renewing, I guess, the series on some of the new Lobo assistant coaches that we've had. Obviously, I did one when Eric Olin was hired. I did a podcast with him. I've done a podcast now with 3 of the 5 assistant coaches. Next week will be one of the 2 remaining. Mikey Howell and Mike Roberts are the 2 guys left that I have not yet done a podcast with on the Lobo coaching staff. So one of those 2 will be next week, next episode, and then I'll probably do 1, maybe 2 episodes in between, and then wrap up the assistant coaching series with the Lobos. But appreciate the numbers that we've been getting on these podcasts. You guys have been consuming and engaging in these. A lot of listeners out there. I know as I record this, I'm staring into a computer, and I kind of forget sometimes that this is a podcast, and that there are an awful lot of you that just listen to this. And I appreciate that. That was the origins of this, and that is what I sometimes have to remember, even when I'm staring at my beautiful face in the computer screen right now. So I appreciate you guys for doing this. abqjournal.com/sports is where you can get all our sports coverage. abqjournal.com/subscribe is where you could support local journalism, shows like this, coverage like we've been giving you, and news, entertainment, politics, of course, and all the sports stuff, high school sports. We've got Ken Sickinger all summer long covering United. We got Isotopes coverage. We got prep coverage all year round. Really, we got James Yotis kind of getting his catching his breath a little bit after just going gung ho all high school season. But there's still some high school athletes, as you've seen in the journal. High school athletes still competing nationwide. A lot of track that just kind of wrapped up this past week with some high school track, but a lot of stuff still going on in the sports world. And I do appreciate those of you that do subscribe to the Albuquerque Journal and help local journalism. And if you can, again, abqjournal.com/subscribe is how you could do that and help local journalism by getting either a digital subscription, print subscription, get a combination of both, but it does help. So much appreciated. Hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Jason Hooten, the third-year coach of the New Mexico State Aggies. Jason, what's up, man? It's summertime, and it's summertime in I guess, college basketball world that things are a little different than they normally are. How are you doing so far in this summer? As I talk to you, it's just really beginning for you, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different than the last time you and I talked 2 years ago. That I don't even know if it didn't even seem like a summer. I think felt like from the season when I left Sam Houston to when I got here. And even at the end of that year, it just seemed everything ran together. So at least now we're at a point where, there is some separation between season and preseason and, summer. But it's been really hectic. We had a lot going on back in Texas with the selling of our house. And so had to make a few trips there to get things tightened up and finished. And then, we have 2 children that are really active and busy. Son's playing a lot of tennis and traveling. And, my daughter is home for the summer with a job and working out. And so it just feels like Kristen and I are going. Probably feels for her like she's going more than me. And then our guys got back this week. So we started practice yesterday, and just seems like, we just ended the other day.
Well, I don't know what normal is anymore for college basketball coaches, but at least when the guys get back, you're at least on the court again, right? There's probably a sense of normalcy. I know you have some similarities to the guy up here in that you were at how long were you before you got to New Mexico State? How long were you at Sam Houston?
Total 19 years, 13 as the head coach.
So you were there 19 years. The UNM Lobos just hired a guy who was at UC San Diego for 21 years between when they were D2 and then made the transition up to D1. I'm not asking you necessarily to give the codes away to the rival coach, but like what would you tell a coach who's been in that circumstance that you were in, where it was one place forever and you liked it and he liked where he was at? You guys wouldn't have been there that long had you not. But then you get an opportunity that you guys both got presented to you and you guys took it. What would you say was the hardest part of the transition from being at one place for so long, so ingrained in that program to making that move?
Yeah, I think it's just the comfortability thing. I remember when we left Tarleton, Kristen and I in 2004, and I had been there 11 years and then 2 as a student athlete. And her and I got married there, built our first house there. But I remember leaving there and how hard it was, even after just 11 years. So I can't imagine the 21 years that Coach, left a place. But it's just that comfortability, right? I mean, I thought about it the other day when I was back for the last time. And, when you leave the office every day, you just get used to taking that same route. You go that same route to the house. And, there was a little convenience store that I stopped at every day and bought myself a Slurpee. And, when I was in there, you get to know the lady that works there behind the cash register. And, you get to know her family and you get to know about her children, and she had a daughter that actually worked there as well. And so I got to know her daughter and she talked about her kids. And so, and then, you get back on the road and you get back to your house and, you check the mail. And so it's just that stuff that makes you really comfortable. And
you probably don't think about until it's gone, right?
you don't, but that was my second doing that. So I did think about those things when I made a choice to come here. And I think that's what made it even harder, And I remember that last night, we had 9 acres out in the country, beautiful swimming pool, hot tub. And I remember the night that I made the decision, Kristen and I were sitting on the back porch, and, I had a Slurpee in hand and she had her Michelob Gold Ultra in hand. And, and we're sitting there talking, and, we made a decision pretty much that evening. But God, it made it even harder because, you're looking around at all those comfortable surroundings that you've had for years and years and years. And you just kind of go through your mind like, hey, if I wake up next week, this is not going to be here. And so it's tough. It really is. But I just think when you look at the big picture of like what's best for your family, and I'm sure Coach Olin made that decision, not just him. I'm sure I've heard he's a really good person, and I'm sure he made that decision based off of what his family thought and needed. And I think that's what you do. I mean, you have to involve your family in that decision. My family was very supportive. They were really excited and fired up. And it's been a tremendous move for us. My daughter has done really well, and my son has done really well, and he loves it here. And my wife, she went from, being a coach, having her own program that she built, basically having things kind of ran the way she wanted them to run every day, and giving all of that up for us to be able to move here. And, and right now she's extremely happy and loves it here. She has a lot to do. She stays really busy and takes care of our household. And so, it's never easy. I think, look at you. I mean, if you've been there a long time and you're really set in there, and, if you were to up and leave tomorrow and go to Houston, Texas to do the same thing you're doing right now, it'd be it'd be an amazing change for you, and a lot of thinking would have to go into that.
Well, I know you and I kind of talked about on the phone once, and I've said this to others, and I mean it, man. Like the coach's wife life is a tough one, and I don't know that they always get enough credit. You certainly give your wife plenty of credit for it, but people kind of need to know that it's not fans aren't going to sit in the stands and cheer for the coach's wife like they do for the teams, but like they put up with a lot, and without them, like none of this happens. None of this works without them.
It's amazing. I mean, unfortunately, in our business, there are a lot of coaches out there who've probably been married a couple of times.
Yeah,
and it's not any one particular. I mean, it's just tough. It really is. It's a tough business to be in, and the wife thing is probably the most important thing in making the whole thing work. It's down to that. And I was very blessed and I was very lucky. I remember, I had to go to a funeral last week back at Tarleton. And I remember I was driving down a road to get where I was staying the night before the funeral. And I remember I drove by this certain parking lot where her and I sat in my car one night. And it was interesting because there were some softball fields there that she was fixing to go. She was still playing softball in a league there, and I was coaching, obviously at Tarleton as an assistant. But I remember sitting in the car that night, and we were starting to get pretty serious. And I just remember, like, all right, this is it. Like, you're either in or you're not in, because this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is a crazy world. Like, I might live in 10 or 15 different states throughout this process. And I just kind of gave it to her in the worst case scenario. And she just said, I'm in. This is what I want to do. And so, and now looking back at it though, Jeff, like, man, how blessed have I been? I've coached for 32 years and I've been at 3 schools.
Yeah.
And there's probably, I don't know if there's a handful of guys probably that could say that. I would say less than 10% maybe in our business. Sure. That have only been at 3 different places in their whole career. And so, I told her how it was going to be, and it was probably not as bad as the picture I painted to her. But also at the same time, Jeff, when you've been it was a hard move to leave Tarleton after 11 years. We built our first house there together, and we met there. We both went to school there. We're both graduates of there. and then to be at Sam Houston as long as we were, and to have those roots really planted. And the house we built, I'll be honest, I mean, we just kind of thought that'd be the last one we built,
Sure.
because it was just out in the country, and she was 15 minutes from her job, and it just kind of was that scenario. But man, God has the plan, and he pulled us in this direction, and we're really happy that he did. It's been great. We love it here. The people of Las Cruces, as you know, are very passionate and very caring and loving people. They just want to win. And, I think that's the great match, is that's what we want to do too. And so it's been a good fit for us, and we're excited about the direction that our program is going.
I will, one more on the personal note. You celebrated a milestone last week. I didn't realize you were doing it by going to a funeral, which I'm sad to hear that, but you also had a milestone. It wasn't just the funeral. You guys also celebrated 25?
We did. Yeah, 25 years.
Congratulations, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, amazing feat for sure, and how hard it is. But it's not hard when when you're married to your best friend, your best friend, and someone who I always say is basically our assistant coach, or my assistant coach. She's a coach, and she's a great feel of people and understands what we go through daily. She knows the highs and the lows, and there's probably been at least once in the last couple of years, if not once every year, where you're ready to quit coaching and turn it in, and jump off a building or something, and and she's just always been she's always been there at the right time. And and I also think that tells you a lot about her. Unfortunately, I did have to go to a funeral last week to someone that was very close to our family, and someone that meant a lot to me and the Tarleton family. And it was on our anniversary, and she didn't even hesitate to tell me, to go. She was like, go to the funeral. And, obviously, we'll celebrate, but just, go do what you need to do. And,
well, you said she's you said kind of like an assistant coach. I have a feeling she's more head coach than assistant coach, but at a minimum, let's give her associate head coach title. Or
yeah, well, associate head coach is probably a better title. You're correct. But no, I think, it's just interesting, because we all, when we coach, doesn't matter what level you coach, whether you're a junior high coach, we all go through the same things, and I always said, Jeff, obviously the higher level you are, the more pressure. But other than that, I think pressure is something that we all put on ourselves regardless. I know you in your profession, you have expectations and you have standards, and you want to be the best. And so you put a lot of pressure on yourself, to do that. I don't envy your profession and what you do, because you have to deal with a lot of people, and sometimes it's not always positive and fun. But I think that, when you're a coach, you understand that day-to-day, hey, was it a good day? Well, usually it's a good day if it was a good practice, or it's a good day if you win the game. She understands all that because she's been through those things before. And, and it's always interesting, I'll come home after the first day of practice, or two, and she'll say, well, what do you think? And I was like, we're terrible. It's the worst team I've ever had. We're not going to be very good. And she laughs and she said, you say that every year. And so she's amazing. She's a tremendous coach. I'm blessed that she gave up her profession for me and our family, because she is a really, really good coach. And the one thing I always admired about her and her teams was she was a very disciplinarian coach like myself. And she was really hard on those girls, but they loved her, and the parents loved her. And, it was always awesome to see those girls over at our house eating dinner and hanging out. And, like the relationships, like even after, years and years, 20 years of coaching, she still has girls calling her. And, these girls now have husbands, and they're married and they have kids, but yet they're still picking up that phone and they're calling her. And to me, that's the most amazing thing about coaches and the coaching profession. This past weekend, I was at a tournament, in Dallas, and it was amazing. I had two former play. No, that's not right. I had 3 former players of mine who are now college coaches, and I had 3 former players of mine who have kids playing in those tournaments now. And they all find out I'm in the building, and they're texting me, Coach, man, can I see you? Coach, can we talk? Hey, can we get together? And Jeff, that's
what it's for, right?
That's amazing stuff, man. I'm so proud of all of those guys. And, I think my biggest prayer is the portal and NIL and all of that is no different, Jeff, than anything else that the game has come across in the last 30 years, right? And what I mean is, like, that's going to figure itself out.
Yeah.
Stuff always figures itself out, right? It's going to work out. It's going to figure itself out. It's going to move on. It may not be what everybody likes or wants, but it's going to work itself out. But the thing I'm more worried about than anything is not that. It's, are you going to be able to build and have those type of relationships where kids are going to pick up the phone and call you and be close to you like they always were in the past? Because a lot of those kids played for me for 4 years. They played for me for 3 years. At least they played for me for 2.
Yeah.
But now, I think, well, we had 2, 3. Rob, Jaden Harris, and Cook are the only guys that played for us 2 or more years in the last 2 years. And it's just that part is hard. That's hard.
All right, I'm going to do one more before we get into a little bit more basketball specific here. I did watch you on the podcast. I guess it was recorded a few weeks ago, but it was the Full Court Press podcast with Sam Davidson and Luke Taylor. I've seen their podcast before. I don't remember actually their names until I looked it up on this one, but they do a good job. They have a lot of coaches on.
They do.
They do a really good podcast. I want people to watch that one, Full Court Press podcast. It's on the Full Court Network, and you'll have I'm going to show it here on the screen in just a second. I'm going to play. This is about 40 seconds of part of that podcast, and I know I already kind of gave you a heads up that I'm going to do this, but it blew me away. The question kind of puts you on the spot and kind of puts in perspective how zoned in you as a coach sometimes can be, because they ask a question that I think a lot of people have heard before, right? But you just you couldn't come up with a good answer because it's just not your world, really. So let me play this clip, and then I'm going to ask you if there's a different answer now, or if anybody's giving you help on an answer. Let me pull this up here and play this.
So they're doing a Hollywood movie about your life, okay? What would the title of the movie be? Who would play you in the movie, and what would be the theme song?
You guys are ridiculous. God, what would the movie be? I'm not a movie person, and I'm just kind of a plain guy. So I don't know what the movie would be.
Let's start with the actor. Is there an actor that you think would kind of take on your persona?
So there you go. And I think some people can probably relate to that, because it seems like an easy enough question to answer. But man, when you get put on the spot like that, it's kind of hard, right? It's so I asked you. I think this podcast just got released last week, but you guys clearly recorded it 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So anyway, I did ask you if afterwards you kind of had a do-over moment in your head, like, oh, I should have said this, or more to the point, I wondered if your wife could help us out and kind of come up with an answer. So I'm going to now ask you, is there an answer to what the name of the movie of your life would be? Well,
so I cheated, obviously, and I asked her because she is a big movie person.
Yeah.
But she wasn't quite as helpful as I thought she would be. So I was really a little disappointed that I didn't have a better answer to this. But, it's weird. It's a cool question, and we had a lot of fun with that. And you and I have had a lot of fun with this so far too. But it's hard for me to look at myself like that. Like,
It's a different
I'm not
mindset,
that
right?
kind of. I'm not that kind of person. Like, at the end of the day, I think we all like to be in those kind of limelight situations occasionally, and we want people to tell us we're doing a good job. But
It's a
for the
mindset.
most part, those things are just not really me. So, but I did ask her this morning, and she said that the title of the movie would be called One Good Man.
Sounds like a wife of a 25-year anniversary about a week ago. You guys are in a good spot. She's obviously, you guys aren't in any kind of didn't do the dishes or take the trash out kind of fight. So she said, "One good man." That's a good answer.
One good man. And then the last two, she wasn't great with. So I kind of did a little thinking, and because again, you kind of gave me the answers to the test, and
Sure.
had me prepared a little bit for this. So, but I think the actor would be James Stewart, and that's got to be like an old throwback. So probably half the people that are watching this podcast don't know who James Stewart is.
Google it, guys.
But I think that was, in all the, in all the Western movies, he was always the cop, the sheriff that kind of came into town, and he kind of got everything cleaned up, but he did it without shooting someone, and he just always had a good way of words with people, and he was the father in It's a Wonderful Life, which I thought was one of the greatest movies of all time, and so I don't know, I just kind of
I like it.
James Stewart.
I like it.
Anyway,
and theme song.
Yeah, the song. So I'm a big music person. I tried to think about this. I don't know. I think the song would be the OJs, and it would be Love Train. And I think the reason I would pick that is just because I don't know. There was just always a line in that song that I always liked, and it was people all over the world join hands. It's the love train. So I had a cousin that was a little older than me, and he always listened to, the 70s R&B stuff. And so I would ride around with him and listen to that, a lot of my childhood, and it just kind of stuck with me. So I listened to a lot of old music.
I like it.
And I like all kinds of music. I'm a pretty pretty neutral guy. I like all kinds of music. So anyway,
I'm gonna have to make sure Sam and Luke know the answer now. I'm gonna have to send them this clip. But again, for everybody watching or listening, the Full Court Press podcast. Give it a listen. It was really good, and they do it. Like I said, they do a good job with all the coaches. All right, let's talk some basketball and some NMSU athletics now. I will start with kind of a story that just sort of broke a little bit yesterday, and I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask specifics, but you are in a situation where there's been an acting AD for, what are we, June, so 6 months now. NMSU is going to launch a national search for an AD. My question is this, what is the role or the importance of the AD head basketball coach's relationship and working relationship? I think some people view it as, or don't realize how important it can be, because you're doing basketball. It seems like you're just doing your thing, and the AD is doing a whole separate thing. But you guys really do need to be on the same page, don't you? What would you hope for in the next full-time AD?
Well, I mean, we all know that this day and age, I think an athletic director's job is probably harder than it's ever been, just because of the media now and a lot of different things that were not important probably back then, like NIL and the portal and all of those different things that you're having to juggle. I think it's different, and I also think that at the microscope that is on a program or a university or just the athletic director alone is incredible. What they probably have to deal with on a daily basis now. I think it's just a different job than it used to be. And Dr. Burge, Amber Burge has done a remarkable job. I think she was put into a tough situation, but a situation that I'm sure, like me coming over here and taking this job, it was one that she looked forward to and that one that she wanted. And I know that, she's worked really hard at trying to hold things together here and to get us going and continue going in the direction that we were, in the right direction. And I think she's done a great job of that. And I do think that she'll be a person that will be in great consideration, I know, for the job. And
I can say, without putting you on the spot, I can say that too. The NMSU has, kind of told me after the Sun News, and Nick had the story first last night, as we record this on Tuesday. And I think I believe he was told, but I know I was told this morning from NMSU that she is expected to very much be one of the candidates.
Yeah. So. And, I just think that relationship has got to be important for sure. In this state, as we all know, basketball is very important in the state of New Mexico. And, I think, here at New Mexico State, this program, it's a legendary program. It's always, been known for basketball and winning. And, and I think that she understands that and she knows that. And, I think it's important for sure that the athletic director and the men's basketball coach, not just the men's basketball coach, all coaches have to have a tremendous working relationship. And, I think the vision, the vision of the university and the program, I think all of those things have to align. And, we all want to win. I think that's the most important thing, is that we're wanting to win. But I also think that, the student athlete welfare and what we're trying to do for our students it's got to be at the top of that list. And, getting them a quality education, having them in an environment where they can be successful and, and reach their goals and their aspirations. So, I'm excited for her and this opportunity, if she is a person that's a candidate, and, but also just the overall search. And, I think that our president has come in and, in a tough, difficult situation. I think we've kind of steadied the ship. And, I know that our athletic department, the committee, whoever else is involved, I know that they'll make a good decision.
I am pulling up now some Ken Palm. You knew it was coming. Me and Ken Palm.
I would have been disappointed if we hadn't gotten that in there.
I don't know how Ken isn't giving me some royalties or something.
You should get a little, at least, some promotions or something.
He is still very much one of the best bargains in all of college basketball by only charging I think it's up to $24.99 a month or a year now. But he could charge $24.99 a month, and I think everybody would probably still get it. It's such a good starting point, right? I mean, I know there's so much more out there, but it's such a good starting point to just kind of get the baseline for a lot of teams. I saw 3 stats I'm going to bring up to you. I'll start with two that were really, really improved, and then one that was just really good, but you were good at it 2 years ago too. But from year 1 to year 2, your turnover percent on offense, in year 1, you were ranked 224th in Division I basketball with 17.7%. That's not how many turnovers per game you had, but the rate per 100 possessions, as Ken Palm does, But you guys were ranked 224th in turnover rate on offense. And last year, you guys improved to 67th. How much did turnover rate on offense and just protecting the ball, how much of that is something you can emphasize as a coach? And how much of that is just some players and teams are a little bit better at it? Because obviously everybody knows to protect the ball. How do you emphasize that as a coach? And how did you guys get so much better at it?
Well, I think that's one of the statistics that comes with your culture, your program, how you want to play. I wish I was as good at Ken Palm as you are. I do have a couple of guys on my staff that are, which helps me, because that's what I need is, I would need a guy like you around that's shooting those things off at me all the time, and that would really help my thinking probably in some areas.
Do you feel that you improved on turnovers though? Like I'm curious. The numbers obviously show it, but if you're not thinking about it, do you feel you did?
I do. I just think though that has a lot to do with your program, and I would guess if you looked back at my teams the last 10 years at Sam Houston, I would guess we would be really good every year at that. And I think it's just because, you've established how you want to play, but you also, Jeff, have established your players. And I think the better your talent is, if it fits your style of play, then that number will, it will increase or get better. And so I do think that, Our talent level got a little better that second year, and I think that's what maybe helped that statistic.
I do see your Sam Houston years, and they were certainly better than year one for you guys at New Mexico State. So you're right there. One other number that you guys improved tremendously on, and I want to ask you how it happened, or if it was just personnel, or if it was something emphasized: offensive rebound rate. And you guys jumped from 190th in the country to 97th in the country. So top 100 in the country in terms of how many offensive rebounds were available that you guys ended up getting. Is offensive rebounding something that you now? I will say this: sometimes offensive rebounding just because you miss more shots, but is offensive rebounding something that you emphasized, or did it just get better because of personnel?
Well, there's no question that we had plenty of opportunities. I think that our inability to make shots and score the ball is something that I think everyone knew about this year. But I also, again, just think that is, that's a cultural thing. That's how my teams have always played and what they've always wanted to be and do. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with talent. It's got to do with personnel. Guys that want to go fetch the ball and guys that are, athletic and tough and all of those things that make up a good offensive rebounder. So definitely staples, things that we want to do. We want to offensive rebound the ball. We want to take care of the ball. We want to guard, defend, and we want to try to be a really good executing team.
You mentioned defend. My third and final little KenPom stat that I just thought was really, really good. In fact, I'm looking through every. He color codes them, makes it easy for guys like me just to do a quick little reference. I think the highest ranking you've had, even through the Sam Houston State years, in any one of his 20-some stats on this page here, the highest ranking you've ever had as a coach was last year in 3-point percent defense. Now, teams took a lot of threes against you guys, but you guys defended it really well. 29.5, it looks like 29.5% against Division I teams. You guys ranked 6th nationally in opponents' 3-point defense. And to be ranked 6th nationally in any one of these stats, obviously you guys are doing something right. Why were you guys so good defending the three when teams did take a lot of them against you?
Yeah, I do believe that in this day and age in the game, 3-pointers are important, right? I mean, if you look the other night at that Indiana game in OKC, I think when Halliburton went out, obviously everyone was thinking that it was going to be tough for them. But to me, the biggest reason was because he makes threes. And then when McConnell come in, who's a really good player, but he takes all twos. And so, in the NBA, I know they live with that take a three or get to the rim. I don't know if you can do that in college basketball as much, just because you have kids that are such great mid-range players. And, so I know that's another KenPom and a philosophical thing. But to me, just defending, I thought we were really good defensively. I don't know what those other rankings were, but I would guess that field goal percentage, we'd have to be in the top 50 in the country.
21st in effective field goal percentage. So
yeah, and see that, Jeff, is to me, that's the number one statistic I look at.
What other teams shoot against you?
Yeah, that's the one. When I get in there at halftime and I take a stat sheet, the first thing I look at is what are they shooting from the field, because I think that statistic can outweigh all the how fast you play or how slow you play, or I remember one year I was coaching against a team and they would always recruit against us, and the coach was a great coach, but their selling point to recruits was, well, we only give up 40 points a game or 50 points a game. And I'm like, yeah, but y'all walk the ball up the court. Like, you can't. But to me, that field goal defense one, that one's important. And then after that, I look at that one, Jeff, then the next one I go to is rebounding, right? Because if you're giving up a low for field goal D, but you're giving up a ton of offensive rebounds, then,
those second chance points can kill you. Now, sometimes second chance points, again, can be a little inflated for a team because they miss so many first shots. Talk about second chances. Well, if you miss your first chance all the time, you're going to have a lot of second chance points just by the numbers. But obviously, if you look at the percentage first, you know how to kind of piece the two together. And
so we just I don't know if this past season was the best defensive team I've ever had, but man, it was one of the top 2 or 3 for sure. Those guys, they just guarded at an elite level, and we had to too, Jeff, because we just were so poor offensively. It kept us in. I mean, it kept us in every game, you know. And I mean, if you look, like the night where we came over to New Mexico and played in the pit, and we just made a million threes that night.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if we just made threes on any given night, I think we could have beaten anybody in the country. And, you know, it was a team that I really, really, really wanted to get to the NCAA tournament with, because those are the kind of teams that you can win that first round game with because you're so good defensively. And, you know, just didn't work out for us.
What I remember about that game in the pit too, and you as a defensive coach, maybe look, you get a win in the pit. That's all that really matters in the big picture. But New Mexico played a good offensive second half, especially. I think they were kind of keeping up, but you guys just kept them at bay because of those threes. You guys kept them at arm's length, and I think they did make a little bit of a run, but you guys just were unfazed by it, and that's what impressed me in that environment, for that team to just sort of not care about anything other than the game right in front of them.
You know, the one thing I remember about that night was, you know, obviously a crazy game, weird ending, goes overtime, and I don't even remember the final score, but I do think they scored like 80, 81 points.
Yeah.
And, you know, my thinking when I got back to the locker room was, you know, if it doesn't go overtime, we hold them in the 70s.
Yep.
And to me, you know, holding that team in the 70s in their own gym, that to me would have won us the game, and should have won us the game in regulation. But that was, yeah, I mean, they were so good, and they were so good offensively and so talented. But I thought that night was it was our night because we made a lot of shots. And on the nights where we did make a lot of shots, you know, it wasn't like we were trying to get into a scoring war with somebody. The nights where we made a lot of shots, we normally kicked people pretty well. And it was just because our defense was so good.
To your point a second ago about this was one of the better defensive teams you had. You guys ranked 78th in the country in adjusted defense, according to Ken Palm. I actually thought it would have been better than even 78th, but you guys ranked 78th. You had two better ranked teams at Sam Houston State. I'm going to tell you the 3 that were top 100 that I'm looking at here. In 2015, your 2015 team had a 48th ranked defense, according to Ken Palm. Your 2022, so your second to last year, you guys were ranked 86th, but your last team at Sam Houston State was ranked 21st, and so that would have been your best defensive team statistically speaking, your last team at Sam Houston State. Does that sound about right? Those seasons sound about right to you?
That's exactly the ones I would have picked, and I don't know, a little trivia for all the people on here, but the 2015 team was anchored in the middle by a man from Manzano High School named Michael Holyfield.
Yeah, brothers. There were 2 really good Holyfields that, frankly, got out of the state and probably shouldn't have. And but both of them, and you benefited from it. I think was he the one that transferred? Was Michael the one that transferred to Texas Tech his final year?
No, that was TJ. That was his younger brother, and he started out at Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah,
and then he ended up at Texas Tech. Good player, both of them good players. Probably a lesson I learned. I took the first one. I should have tried to take the second one, and I didn't try to take the second one, and he ended up kicking my butt over at SFA for a couple of years. So
that's
anyway,
fun. Yeah, the two really good players that probably didn't get the love they deserved in Albuquerque when they were here. Now they got covered, you know, by our high school reporter and all that, but they probably should have. There probably should have been more of a push to keep them in state by the 2 schools, frankly. And
you know. I don't disagree with you just because, you know, Michael was 6'10", 6'11".
Size, yeah, if nothing
had
else.
a great Travis Julian, great high school coach. So, you know, he had been really well coached. And but I just think he was really, you know, Jeff, he was raw. And
they both got a lot better.
He just wasn't developed yet. But, you know, I remember going to Vegas and watching him in that big AAU tournament. And, you know, he was on a good team, but, you know, kind of a backcourt late night game type team. You know, I remember the first time I watched him play, it was like a 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock game. And it was on one of those back courts. I mean, there was like 2 coaches in the stands. And, you know, I watched him and I was like, oh my God, like, you know, and it was my first year as a head coach. So I'm like, we got to find a young big that we can have for 4 years and we can groom him and get him the way we want him. And man, he got better and better and better. And I'll never forget our first conference game. his junior year. So it was halfway through his junior year. We were at Northwestern State in Natchitoches, Louisiana, and the ball was rolling around on the floor under the basket, and he leaned over, picked it up, and went straight up and ripped the rim off. And I told my assistants next to me, I was like, he's here. And, man, he had a great rest of that year. And then his senior year for us, 9 points, 9 rebounds. Yeah. Just, I think he's second in the history of shot blocks at Sam Houston State. Just was a great person. And he's actually getting married in July in Austin. He's carved out a tremendous professional career over in Japan. Has probably done really well for himself, but marrying a beautiful young lady, and they're getting married in Austin this summer. So I'm going to try my hardest to get down there and be there for that.
Very cool. I'm looking at a roster of names. We'll finally give you that are watching and listening, the Aggie fans that want to hear some of the actual players' names on this year's team. I'm looking at a roster of names. I don't know a lot of them, so I'm going to lean on you for this. How many returners do you have? Is it really just? Is it just 2 of these guys that were on the team last year?
Yeah, Jeff, we really just have 2, but we have a young man that was with me at Sam Houston my last year, and then he stayed my first year here. He went to Canada last year, and around Christmas time, he called and wanted to come here and be with us, and so his name is Anthony Rishich.
Yep.
And he's a young man from Canada. Was born in Poland.
He knows what he's getting into if he was there at Sam Houston. So
yeah, really good player for us. He's a culture guy. We like a lot, and so I guess because he's been with me for a couple of years, I would say that we kind of have 3 guys returning and 10 new guys. But yeah, I mean, if you look at that roster, there's a lot of question marks on there, which I would also guess probably 80 to 90% of every college coach is saying that right now as well.
Yeah, a whole new world, that's for sure. Without the heights in front of me, I have the list, and I should have put down all their heights and all. You guys do you guys have size? Do you guys have some speed? I'm not going to ask you necessarily to single out a whole lot of who's your starting 5 going to be, but like who are some guys that will probably provide some of the size for you?
Yeah, Sear Malonga, a young man that was at East Carolina. I think one thing, Jeff, that I've tried to do more than anything is, when we take guys out of a portal, I love to take them from programs where the coach, or the assistant coach, or someone where you're kind of getting what you're getting what you're getting. And Sear played for Coach Schwartz there, who worked for Coach Barnes at Texas, a great friend of mine. Rodney Terry's great friend. So I've known Mike for a long time, but I got a young man that worked for me at Sam Houston that's an assistant coach there. And, when Sear decided to get into the portal, just being able to call them and them be able to tell me, hey, hard worker, great kid, going to bring it every day. Here's where he needs to get better. But, Sear got kind of caught in a numbers game there. And the guy that was in front of him was first team all conference in the AAC. So, to me, it's probably just a tough situation. And then when he probably was going to get his opportunity there this year, it was just, he was probably at a point where it was like, I want to go somewhere where I'm going to have a chance to prove myself. And, we've only been working out a couple of days, but just a really, I think, a presence for us inside.
He's not quite 7 foot, but he's a good.
He's probably a little legit 6'11", but a great body. 245, really athletic, can play above the square, can protect the basket. I just think it was definitely something that we needed. And the greatest thing about him, though, is just the quality of a human being he is. Like, nice. On top of all of his stuff academically, and everything you ask him to do, he gets done immediately. So he fits our culture, and really excited about having him.
Again, not a starting 5 type question, but you got a couple guards that maybe are getting the most excitement or most attention. I know you got guys that people maybe not have heard of at all that might end up being starters, and that's the beauty of all this. But what kind of transfers are coming in with maybe the more attention than others?
Yeah, I mean, Jamel Jones from Cal State Bakersfield, again, just played for a Hall of Fame type coach there at Bakersfield. And, I know he's been in some tough practices day in and day out. We visited with their staff quite a bit. And, I think a young man that was looking for an opportunity maybe to play in a league like Conference USA and have an opportunity for some NIL. But Jamel's a good player. I mean, he averaged about 18.9 points a game. And the biggest thing that stuck out about him to me was that he shot almost 49% from the field. For a guy that takes a lot of shots and also, scores a lot of baskets, to be able to still shoot almost 50% as a guard in this day and age, that's an amazing statistic. Ken Pom had him as one of the better assist percentage guys, which means when he did pass and make passes, his passes usually turned into baskets for his team. His percentage was one of the top half in the country. So, I felt really good about him. And, Jeff, he can get the ball in the basket. And I felt like that was one of the biggest needs for us was, everybody's going to scout you good. Everybody's going to know what you're running. At the end of the day, man, there's going to be times where you just got to make a basket and you got to make a play. And I do think that he can do that. Another young man, Elijah Elliott, 6 games in last year at Southern Illinois, he tears his ACL against the national champion, Florida Gators. But, the game before that at Oak State, he had like 28. He was playing so well, and probably we wouldn't be talking about him right now. If he doesn't tear his ACL last year, he's probably going to a Power 5. So he's recovering right now. He's not quite there yet. I think he's about a month away or so from being fully released. But right now we've got him with our great training staff, and he's able to go through some of the plays and get some shots up every day. But as far as 5-on-5 and cutting and contact, he's still about a month away, from us being.
I'm curious with a guy like that who you obviously have a high opinion of. That's why you recruited him and he transferred, and how how good he was right before the injury. Of course, you're not going to rush him, but is there a little bit of testing your patience when you got a whole new roster and you want to see this guy on the court because you think he could be pretty good? Is there a little bit of testing your own patience as a coach a little bit? Again, not suggesting you would push him, but man, you want him out there, don't you?
Of course. I mean, heck, I've got one of the best trainers in the country, in my opinion. And, when she called me last week and said, hey, we've done all of our testing and look, he's not where we thought he was going to be when he got here. He's not there. His other leg is probably 3 or 4 times stronger than the hurt one. I was disappointed. I don't want to say I was mad at somebody, but, I was definitely disappointed. You want to, it's scary, the time that we don't have to get ready, because before you know it, November the 3rd will be here. Yeah. But, look, this guy's got 2 years left. His career is more important than me worrying about getting our ball screen motion in this summer. We got to get him for the long haul. We need him to be 100% healthy. And, and like all kids, I mean, those relationships are important, but, Elijah, I've known since he was in 11th grade. He went to high school in Houston. I had him on campus at Sam Houston 2 or 3 times. So there's a relationship there with himself and family. And, we want to make sure that he's 100% before we put him out there in dangerous harm.
Any of your freshmen going to get some minutes? I guess that's putting you on the spot a little bit, but are your freshmen ready freshmen?
Well, it's not putting me on the spot. I just don't know yet because we hadn't done enough to be out there. I mean, Augustine is, he's a legit 6'10", and again, another guy that plays above the square. Right now he's probably about 215, 220, and, he needs to get stronger, put on some weight. And then just learning the college game, but he's got a chance and we like him a lot. Omar is a little bit of a different story. I mean, you're talking about a 6'5" shooting guard who, won a state championship in high school, played for his father. He's got a chance to be a really, really, really special player. And, I think he'd be a kid if he was here, Jeff, for 4 years. He'd have to be in those conversations with some of the top Aggies that have been here because, 6'5" guards that can shoot the ball, and our level, they just don't come around every day. Our staff did a tremendous job of recruiting this young man. Sean Buchanan, former Aggie, was the lead of that recruiting and did a tremendous job of us landing this young man. And, he's going to be a special player. There's no question about it.
Well, I don't know if he's going to rise to this level, but I'd be remiss if, as we record this 2 days after the NBA Finals completed, if I didn't at least bring up Pascal Siakam's kind of place in Aggie history and even history of all the players that have come out of New Mexico. How do you, as a coach, like, what's the practical way to capitalize on that? Obviously, you're happy for him. We get that, and that's the main thing. But a program like NMSU needs to kind of capitalize on moments like him being in the finals. Is that something that you readily or often bring up during recruiting, or how do you approach having a guy on his stage?
Well, I personally haven't been blessed yet to be able to meet Pascal in person. And I'm also not a person that, is trying to use any kind of platform or any kind of, his success to do anything dramatic for us in our program. For me, it's just, we need to do those things, but we need to do those things because, I can't personally wait to meet the guy because of how the person that he is. Like, if you watch his interviews, this guy it's almost like he's not a real person.
Yeah.
It's amazing, his heart and his team first mentality. And I don't know if there's not many as humble superstars out there right now as this guy. And yeah, he's a superstar. There's no question he is. To me, a superstar is a guy who obviously produces, but he also makes everyone around them better. And, I think that team is not where they were without him. He was a great addition. The Pacer organization, is first class. I think a week after they picked him up, they sent me a Indiana Pacer jersey,
Nice.
with his number and name on it. And, I had just gotten here, and, that's stuff that they didn't have to do at all. Obviously Coach Menzies was Pascal's college coach and recruited him.
But your guy there, for those that don't know, your guy there on staff he's Pascal's guy. Like, Preston Laird is he's the guy that Siakam kind of gives shouts out to.
Yeah, and well deserved. Preston obviously is doing a tremendous job for us. He's a great human being as well. But Pascal's that type of person. Like, Preston, Preston was the guy that was up here at 12 o'clock at night getting that thing out of the net and throwing it back to him 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
And Preston was the guy that went over to the apartment and picked him up and brought him to class and, was always there for Pascal. And that tells you a lot even more about Pascal is how he respects Preston and gives him those shout outs because of how much Preston did for him and how much he meant to him. So I'm hoping that I get an opportunity to meet him and sit down and talk with him just because of the person he is. Like, he's one of those guys you just want to pick his brain and, what was your time like here? And, just your time in the NBA and, some things that, I'd love for him to talk to our team. Can you imagine, the guys looking up to him
right,
because of how great of a player he is. But by the time he gets through speaking with them, they're going to be looking up to him because of the type of person, that he is. So what a year they had. It was unfortunate the way it ended. And who knows whatever happens if that doesn't play out that way. But at the end of the day, you can't take away from what they've done and what they accomplished as a team. And then Pascal's year, getting an MVP in that first round. And I think if they would have won Sunday, he gets MVP of the series.
I think so too.
Yeah. So just well-deserved, tremendous year. And, just a great representation of what we want Aggie basketball to be about.
All right, Jason, I'm going to wrap it up with this. Tell the people watching or listening one other thing about this year's team that maybe you're hopeful of, but also that you do expect from this year's team.
Well, Jeff, I know this is always, in the profession that you're in, and I follow you. I think you do a remarkable job. And before I get to that topic, I do want to say, like, the amazing thing about you, Jeff, is I know you're a New Mexico State grad, but yet you handle your job like if people really follow you, they would never know that you're a New Mexico State grad. And, you know, I think that that's your loyalty to your job and who writes your check every month. So there's a lot to be said for that. And I know deep down, probably those games are hard for you to watch because, you know, this is your alma mater. I know looking back, those games, Sam Houston and Tarleton, man, those things were hard. Those were hard games to play, you know, especially when you went back in that gym. Now, what made it a lot easier was we won 3 out of 4 of those. So,
Brandon Mason and I always talk around the time the Aggies and Lobos play, and it's tough. Like, and he was on the UNM coaching staff, and obviously was on New Mexico State staff and played at New Mexico State. So, yeah, he and I always have a good time around that game to sort of play this balancing act, because he's Mr. Basketball here in Albuquerque, and everyone loves Brandon.
This podcast wouldn't be right if I didn't have a chance to throw a jab at B Mace. So
exactly,
I'm not sure he seems to me like I mess with him all the time. I'm like, man, are you sure you played at New Mexico State and graduated here? But I like to jab at him, and I like to play with him a little bit with that stuff. So. But, what I was going to get to is, like, you're always – it's funny, but I remember my very first year as a head coach at Sam Houston, they had that message board. And, I went in there one night and I was playing around in that thing. And Kristen came in and she's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just messing around looking in here. And she was like, don't go on that thing and look at that. She goes,
She knew.
She goes, you can win 30 games. And you could get beat in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and everybody's going to say, man, we should have went to the second round. Like, you're never going to please everybody. Like, you're just not. And so, what I was going to say is that your job is the same way. If you make a comment out there, man, you're going to have – if there's 100 people going to respond, 50 of them are going to get down your throat.
Yep.
And so what I want to say about our program is from where we were when I got this job – 2 years ago to where we are today, I'm as proud as I can possibly be. Now, is our goal to win the league and go to the NCAA tournament? Absolutely. And we're not going to be happy until we do that. But for where we're at right now, in 3 hours, I'm going to get a whistle and put it around my neck and I'm going to walk in there. And when I walk in there, man, we're going to all have the same stuff on. We're going to all look like a family and a team. We're going to work really, really hard. We're going to talk and communicate. Like, that's a basketball program, and that's a culture. And so for where we're at right now, I'm really proud and I'm really happy of that. Now, for what we got going forward, we felt like we needed to get better and we needed to get more talented, and we needed to, we got to find a few more different pieces that I think will be able to elevate us to that next level. We were right there this year, like really close in year 2. And there's a fine line, as you know, between first and fourth.
Yeah.
And, there's a fine line between winning 2 more games in that conference tournament. And we were right there. I mean, we very easily in year 2, we could have done that. So, but we didn't. And, for me, I just think moving forward, we want to continue to improve. And, who knows, maybe this is the year. But I think that working hard every day and the things that we believe in and, continuing to bring some pride back to this program in this state. I want to be able to walk to Santa Fe and, walk through a store and somebody say, hey, man, thank you for getting this program back to where it's always been and what it deserves to be, and to me, that's what makes me proud, because I'm a proud person, but this is an unbelievable state. And the pride in this state is not anything I've ever seen in my life. And that is no disrespect to Texas or where I was or anything, man. That is just that these people here are very, very, very prideful. And
chip on your shoulder kind of pride in New Mexico, I think.
No doubt. And, and also, look, I mean, we always know that New Mexico State has kind of been, treated a little bit differently maybe. And that's not a slight on anybody else. I think that's just what it's always seemed like. And
it helps win the mentality. I mean, yeah, it helps win the mentality.
For sure. And I'm that type of person. I mean, I had the best father that a person could ever ask for. And, but my dad wasn't a coach. He worked in construction, worked for the same man for 40 years. And, and where I'm sitting at today was not given to me. I was very blessed and to be under some great coaches and to always probably be at the right place at the right time. But I really feel like, I'm that chip on the shoulder type person as well, and, if you look at our team last year, we lost at home to Abilene. I probably had a meltdown moment and because we were playing really bad and I didn't feel good about our team at the time. And I spent probably 72 hours, picking myself up off the mat, calling, everybody from my mentor, Lon Reisman, to Coach Barnes at Tennessee, and guys that I believe in and guys that have been great to me in my career. And, and all of them told me the same thing and the same stuff. And then, 24 hours later, we go over to the pit and win one of the biggest games of the year not because it was the pit and it was New Mexico, no disrespect, but because of coming off of a loss and playing as bad as we had played all year long. I thought that was a huge win for our program to just show that, hey, you know what, we can be good and you guys can get this done. And I think from there, man, we took off and we played really well the rest of the year. And so I like what we have signed. I think every coach right now could sit there and say, man, I love my team. And, but none of us have faced any adversity yet. And we hadn't played any competition or played at all, but I think we recruited some really good human beings and some guys that have some great skill. And I think that, most of the time in my career, Jeff, when you add those two things together, some success comes with that. So I think that's what we're looking forward to this season.
Well, Jason, I appreciate you doing this podcast, and sure enough, I ate up an hour of time, so I apologize. I'm sure there's people waiting outside your office to talk to you.
It's all good, man.
I'll tell you what I just heard. I heard guaranteeing conference championship. I heard, okay, maybe not guaranteeing a conference championship, but it sounds like the kind of team from a starting point right now. We'll see what it becomes, but from a starting point, you're pretty proud of. I also will point out that since I will catch grief for even having the Aggies coach on my podcast, I will point out there's not a Lobo fan up here that appreciated the part of this podcast where you were talking about last year's team couldn't shoot, because in the pit your team could shoot, and nobody's going to believe that you guys had trouble scoring last year. That only saw that game in the pit. That's for sure.
Well, we had a good night there for sure. I do think that. And I'm sure some of the things I've said will probably make New Mexico State people mad. But, I'll say this, man, that place will bring the best out of your team if you have that type of team. And I think we had that type of team. Our guys, man, when we went into tough environments last year, I know your stuff, man, but we were 6-3 on the road in Conference USA, and
crazy how good you guys were on the road. Yeah,
we were 4-0 on Thursdays, and so I think our team, we just had that kind of mentality, and and that's my mentality. So it made me feel good that your team resembles a little bit of your mentality. I'd like to have that same stuff this year, Jeff. We just need the ball to go in the basket a little bit more frequently, and I think if we can do that, we got a chance to be in the race. And that's what you want. You want to be in the race. We were in the race this year. It came down to the end. I really felt going into that conference tournament, we had a chance to win it. But unfortunately, sometimes when you get into those games, your weaknesses rear their ugly head. And, we got into that Kennesaw game that night. We just couldn't buy a basket. We had a wide open three with 50 seconds to go to put us up 2, down 1. Top of the key, your best shooter. I mean, you take that 9 out of 10 times. And if he makes that, you win that game. And, who knows? I know Liberty had a great team and we're hard to beat, but we're excited. Like I said, you just want to, at the end of the year, you just want to be in the race.
Well, here's to a few more baskets going in this year, Coach. I appreciate the time. I'm going to meet up with you a lot more frequently going forward. I didn't do a very good job of it last year, but I need to keep everybody up here updated on you guys a little more regularly. So I'm gonna be annoying you during the season.
Well, we have a lot of Aggies up there, so
True.
I think it's a good thing, and I always appreciate you for what you do for the game of basketball, and we appreciate it, man. Aggie up.
Appreciate you, Jason. All right, well, there you go. Jason Hooten, the third-year coach of the New Mexico State Aggies. Long conversation, so I certainly appreciate him for doing that. Appreciate those of you who are still watching or listening for sticking through a good hour-long almost conversation with the New Mexico State coach. But I need to touch base a lot more with New Mexico State during the season and plan to this coming year. Lobo fans, what can I tell you? There's 2 D1 programs in the state. Lobos will still get the vast majority of my attention and our resources at the Journal. But the Aggies need to get a little bit more of a presence in the Albuquerque Journal, as well as a lot of Aggie alum, a lot of Aggie fans, a lot of Aggie interest in Bernalillo County and Santa Fe as well. So I will say that I anticipate a little more Aggie basketball coverage this year. And if any of you guys think that's going to cut into the Lobo basketball coverage, you're mistaken. We know what the primary interest around these parts and this podcast and the Albuquerque Journal sports section is, and a lot of you still consume an awful lot of Lobo basketball content. A lot of Lobo basketball coverage is what you want, and it is what we love delivering, and I think we do it pretty well. And I appreciate you guys for following along and subscribing if you can. abqjournal.com/subscribe. I'll keep saying it. It's how you can support local journalism. And guess for now, signing off from my back patio. Lovely Tuesday night edition of the Talking Grammar podcast. Hope you guys enjoy not only this, but all the ABQ Journal Journal Cast is abqjournalcast.com is where you can find all our podcasts. And we got some good ones, and they're starting to pick up steam a little bit. I think some of the reporters that were young and new to podcasting are starting to get their feet under them a bit, and it's exciting to see, because I think the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network is really starting to, like I said, pick up steam. Take a look. A lot of good shows on there. And until next time, signing off from my back patio. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.